podcast here. Rich Delivers, your conservative pundit here, and we are going to be attacking leftist ideology, Democrat policies and values, and why Democrats and progressives, liberals, Marxists, communists, socialists are absolutely failing at building your net worth. Under Joe Biden's presidency, please tell me how you became wealthy. If you are out there living paycheck to paycheck, working at Walmart, Target, have your own small business, please explain to me how much money you made under the Joe Biden administration in those 4 long, high inflationary periods. What we have is a bunch of progressives and leftists on Twitch and other platforms telling you just how awful the economy is under Donald Trump. As we recall back to 2016 to 2020, it was the most explosive, dynamic economy America has seen since Ronald Reagan reduced the interest rates of Jimmy Carter's 18 to 22% interest rates. The disastrous economy and the Iran hostage scandal that went on for 400 plus days. Ronald Reagan took over the presidency, all the hostages were released from Iran. Here we are, decades later, and a Republican, conservative President Donald J. Trump is tackling the Iran situation with heavy approval from the independent voter. The independent voter is the one who swings elections, and right now they are polling very, very high. The new CNN Mars poll has them an 85% approval rating. Now that spells doom and gloom for the Democrat Party for the midterm elections coming up. I'm going to make a prediction right here. The Republicans will retain the House and the Senate. And of course, the Trump agenda will march forward, building a net worth for those living in paycheck poverty. That's the goal of Greenback Talk. Tackle paycheck poverty, and hopefully I'm going to help you end paycheck poverty. So right now we're going to look at a few things. We're going to be looking at the labor force participation rate. We're going to look at the ISM number. We're going to be looking at the unemployment numbers and how all these numbers here have been manipulated. And what happened now is they got their hands caught in a cookie jar because of the net migration and the negative migration under Joe Biden. See, Joe Biden brought in millions and millions of people, but they wanted to use the same census data to compute the unemployment number. So we have a numerator and a denominator. N over D is basic math, right? Remember that? Then we have the census data that comes out every 10 years. But when they compute the numbers, the census data never changes, even though they imported millions and millions of people into the country, but the census never changed. So the numerator changed, the denominator changed, but then they can easily manipulate those two numbers with the census number that stays consistent regardless of the population growth in the country. And so for 2026, we're going to see a whole different parameter. Probably used to hearing the news saying that we need to have 125,000 jobs to keep the unemployment rate at a certain number. Well, that's been a falsification and a manipulation of data now for a long time, and now there's AI models for computing different numbers and facts. And then we have the census data, and then we have the negative migration, net migration, legal immigration, and then the participation rate. Now they want to take the participation rate at ages 16 plus. So the government wants you to believe that they are tracking everybody submitting an application, everybody out there applying for a job or looking for a job, actively or passively looking. This is what they're trying to claim. So we're going to break it down here. I've got the labor force growth document pulled up. It's the latest data we have here, and it's been slowing. So we'll get to break it down. It's a lengthy report. I go through all the reports here. We're going to talk about consumer sentiment. Another interesting fact is that it's partisan polling data. And again, who are the ones who are very happy with the information coming out of the economic situation under Donald Trump? It's the independents. We are finding that the Republicans have slipped slightly, but strongly favoring Donald Trump, and of course the Democrats unfavorable. So you have at both extremes taking place. The Democrats who absolutely hate Donald Trump and everything he does, and then you have the Republicans for the majority of the positions will agree to most things that Trump is doing. Cannot agree with anything any politician is doing. That's lunacy. That's what the Democrats do. That's the Democrat position. Attack, attack, attack. Spew hate. Claim love. And everything is good with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Yet I believe they forgot just how bad it was under the Biden years with inflation between 9 and 13%. Unemployment was surging. COVID was running rapid. The president was getting the COVID shots on TV. I think they were placebo shots. I don't think they were actually giving the president a live COVID shot. So now we have a lot of health issues from those COVID shots. A lot of people lost their jobs, their homes, their cars, their businesses, their relationships, their families. Lockdowns prevented people from seeing their loved ones in hospitals and skilled nursing facilities. Certain businesses were allowed to stay open, others had to close. And then the Small Business Association was giving big loans to foreign nationals and not giving those to the American citizen. Kelly Loeffler at the SBA, she said enough is that, and there are no more $750,000 loans coming to foreign nationals or illegal aliens. And the $2,600 payment now to self-deport is in jeopardy. We have a GOP representative out of the state of Florida. She is proposing amnesty for everyone who came into the country illegally, and this is based on her corporate donors. There's been other outlets reporting on this. I'd like to let that settle down for a couple of days. I've had the information on my desk now for a little while. I've been tracking this. I track global and international affairs. If you follow my newsletters or if you follow me on social media, you know that it's a diverse information superhighway here that I try to produce. So the amnesty bill coming out of Florida has the sponsorship of several other GOP representatives. They're probably Republican in name only. Now the Democrats are going to cheer for this. Oh, cheer, cheer, cheer. It's going to lower your wages. If you are in your late 20s to early 40s, any type of amnesty, any type of illegal, any number of them, is going to lower your earning potential, your buying power, is going to cause inflationary pressures. It is going to include manipulation of more data and more unemployment numbers. It's going to create real estate to skyrocket, cars again to skyrocket. It's going to be another COVID situation. So when you have an open borders proponent who wants to allow in another 5, 10, 15 million people into the country cannot handle that. We're still trying to digest the 10 to 15 million illegals that Joe Biden let into the country. This is why your real estate prices and your rent prices are so high. This is why your food prices are high. They're higher now because of the war, and gasoline is a future commodity. Contracts are signaling an upward trend, some are on a downward trend depending on how far you're looking out into the contracts. A lot of people are complaining about the oil contracts, and people are getting rich. Well, what's stopping you from buying an oil contract? What's stopping you from playing the options market? When you play options, you borrow the stock. When you play the equities market, you purchase the stock. You buy it for price A, you sell it for price B, and if there's a gain, you pay a capital gains or you hold on to it, and if there's a loss, you deduct that from your taxes. That's how that little game works. So a lot of financial people have been trying to chomp at my bit, except they're not talking about financial issues. They're talking about personal issues. How much can I bench press? A lot. How many times can I curl the 45-pound bar? A lot. How much can I leg press? Quite a bit. How many pull-ups can I do? How long do I have? How many push-ups can I do? How much time do I have? How many dips can I do with 10 pounds on each leg on the dip machine? How much time do I have? The people that ask these questions and challenge people are the ones who cannot do it. They'll be lucky to do 10 to 15 push-ups before they fatigue. How fast can you run a 40-yard dash? Under 5 seconds. Can you do butterfly swimming in an Olympic pool? I can. I've posted that. There's video. I've posted these videos at 6,400 feet above sea level in the state of Colorado, where we did this. It was for mitochondria testing. I was doing case studies for some of the hospitals and doctors and for myself and my health coaching and personal training. Online consultations I was doing focused on mitochondria, dysfunctional and healthy. It comes from the mother, and it produces energy that feeds ATP. But there are tricks that we found in the case study at Mile High, and then we went to sea level. The explosion of strength and stamina and endurance was noted. So to get back to the amnesty, so now the GOP rep in Florida wants to give amnesty and green cards to all these illegal people. It's going to cause a housing crunch, as I mentioned. It's going to cause a food crunch. It's a consumption tax. Consumption. The more people chasing fewer goods is going to cause inflation, just like when they print money. So if they lower the interest rates on real estate, they're afraid it's going to cause a buying frenzy. So they're a little over 6.25% right now for a 30-year. Let's say they were to drop down to 3.5%. Well, those who are ready to buy, like myself, are going to take advantage of that situation. But there's a lot of people out there who don't have the debt to income, don't have the salary, don't have the credit, don't have the housing ratio. They don't have the cash on hand, the liquidity to make that happen. They're not pre-qualified. They're not ready. Greenback Talk does its best to get you prepared to buy that first piece of real estate to help you build a net worth living paycheck to paycheck. And so as an independent, I have to think critically and with a sane mind, knowing that 2 + 2 = 4, and knowing basic mathematics, and doing deep dives and research from the state and federal sides of the bills and laws and introductions of nonsense and the focus and break things down. So amnesty, that's going to destroy your buying power. It gives the Democrats more votes, but according to the line-by-line itemization, what's in the bill, they can never become citizens for at least 7 years. It's always 7 years. There's always 12 million illegals, and it's always a 7-year period. It hasn't passed. It didn't pass with Barack Hussein Obama as president when he had control of all 3 houses. It didn't pass under George W. Bush. It didn't pass under Donald Trump, although it never passed under Donald Trump because Donald Trump wants you, the American citizen, the taxpayer, the hard-working blue-collar person, to buy a home, to increase the net worth of your household, to take care of your family. Now, another major difference is that Democrats are trying to promote non-marriage. The family is evil, Christ is evil, the Bible is evil, religion is evil, unless it's Islam and radical Islam. That's what the Democrat Party is focused on now. They are fully supportive of Sharia law. Look up Sharia law. Women have no rights. They're allowed to be abused. It doesn't happen if you read the Bible. Bible has 10 commandments. It doesn't have under common sense. The country, the United States of America, was founded on the Bible. As a matter of fact, 12 of the 13 colonies already had a religion in place. And Thomas Jefferson did not want to institute a federal religious bylaw or a proclamation, because 12 of the 13 colonies already had their religious liberty set. There's only one colony that did not have a religious sect, or focused on a religion, or a sect of religion. Can you name that colony? That colony was Rhode Island. And here now we are today, and Rhode Island is heavy blue, but you know what? They wouldn't be heavy blue if they got infested with 500,000 illegal aliens who could not speak English. So you as a Democrat, the majority of people on this platform are Democrats, progressives, Marxists, socialists, communists, however you want to, leftists, however you want to categorize it. I'm here to counter your every argument, your every move. You don't have much of an argument. What they like to do is just play a video and dissect the video. They can't stand up here right now and just rattle off information off the top of their heads. They're not rehearsed. They don't have the information, the data, the dialogue. They don't have the brain space that God gave them. So what I usually say now is, God gave you a brain, use it. And if you did so great under Joe Biden, tell us all about it. Now, if you're smart, you know how to play the markets when a Democrat's in the White House and when a Republican's in the White House, or who controls Congress and the Senate. You know how to play the markets. You know how to invest. You know when to have cash, when to invest in cyclicals, when to buy a put, when to short, when to long, when to get into contracts, what commodities to look at. You know this, or you have an idea. You can speculate. You have a little bit more risk tolerance depending on who is there representing your needs, your policies, your ideas, your beliefs, right? So let's get into the labor force participation rate here and the unemployment, the potential GDP growth. It's a real complex article, but it's been slowing now, and it's been driven now by weak population growth. So they're going to blame everything now on population growth. And what I do know about population growth is we had about 3,600,000 births in 2025. We also had 1.1 million abortions in 2025. Do you think that's an issue? Do you think by not having births, not having a nuclear family, and not having a mom and a dad, male and female, running the household, do you think that's good or bad? It's real easy to put up a video of Donald Trump saying a few words and then to try to dissect that for the audience. This is an overall summary of financial situations, method, rules, laws, governs the bodies, and who's in charge, why they're in charge, why they should not be in charge. To give you a perspective that you're not getting anywhere else. Where else you can get this perspective from? Well, I'm sure some people out there stealing my content. I've already seen that on television. I've seen that on radio, and I've seen that in print. I consider that the ultimate compliment. And as my network expands, my news becomes more original, because you're not going to be able to get the news I'm getting, because my news is coming from the street, from blue-collar workers in different little cities and towns that no one knows about, no one's going to, but they're giving me economic data. Isn't that great? So in a little town of Nebraska, how much are eggs and gasoline? How much is a bottle of water? How much is a gallon of milk? How much is steak? How much is chicken? How much is turkey? How much is ground pork? How much is pork chops? What are potatoes, bananas, and celery selling for? How about fertilizer? How about soil? How about plants? And those are going to be the interesting things to get to when you get down to the little small towns and villages across the country. So as this network expands, my newsletter expands, my information expands to include more detailed information to help you make informed decisions to build a net worth living paycheck to paycheck. And I've said it repeatedly, you can call me any name in the book that you want, you're not going to hurt my feelings. It's just not going to happen. I kind of laugh at that. I find that to be comical when you have to use that type of language. It happens all the time on LinkedIn. Out of the clear blue, and then I find the echo chambers. Back to the amnesty, we'll get to the echo chambers next. Okay. Okay, so let's get back to the labor force participation growth, and we're talking about the slowing now of the population. We have a weak population growth, and that's reflecting the low net immigration numbers, and that's leading to a declining labor force participation rate. Well, if we had right now, if 5 million people were to die of whatever sickness, let's just say the rapture happened and 5 million people are gone. They've made their way to heaven. Do you think we're going to have a labor force participation rate issue? Well, of course we are, unless all those people are 90 years old and they're collecting Social Security, which they paid in for, which is an entitlement, which is bankrupting the country with $39.1 trillion worth of debt. So we're going to say that everyone who's in the workforce is suddenly raptured, 5 million people. Do you think that's going to affect the numbers? Well, it should. They're still going to use the same census data. So if the census data said there was 150 million people in the workforce, but we lost 5 million people, they're not going to change anything because the census hasn't changed. It's quite interesting. This is how they skew the numbers. This is what corporations and real estate, they want you to rent their real estate. That's the next big goal. I've mentioned this several times. If you don't own real estate, you're in trouble. If you're not making a decent living, you need to change jobs, get a skill, whatever that is. The time that loving your job is over. It's work. If you love what you're doing, you're making a lot of money. Well, that's more power to you, but not many people can say that. So you have to do something that produces an income so you can build a net worth and obtain some freedom and liberty. Because without that, you're a sink, you're a dink. Single income, no kids, sinking to the bottom, circling the drain, as I say in the medical profession. Circling the drain, or if you're a dink, double income, no kids, now you have a chance. You have a chance now to save, get close to God, read the Bible, build a solid foundation, and have that family. And then you get tax breaks, and you can afford the little starter home, the white fence that you're going to have to paint and mow the lawn, pay taxes on. Put a little blood, sweat, and tears into that house and get some equity. That's why it's called sweat equity, because you had to sweat and work to increase the value of that home. It's not a new build with builder lending and manicured lawns where all the landscaping looks the same, all the roofs are most likely the same. You may have a few variations of the elevations of the house, but it's very similar, very simple. So labor force participation rate, this is going to be unprecedented now. This is unprecedented of what's taking place because we have so many people come into the country. Now we're having so many people leave the country, and now what they've decided to do is they've decided to put up an amnesty bill to prevent people from being paid the $2,600 and going back to their countries until things settle down. We figure out how to really solve this issue. Not the Republican way, not the Democrat way. You're going to find lunacy in both those problem solvers. It's all about self-gain for them. They don't care. As a matter of fact, one of the quotes was, who's going to clean the toilets? Who's going to wash my dog? Who's going to wash my car? Who's going to pick the peanuts? Who's going to pick the cotton? It's the glorified slave trade right in front of your eyes. Malcolm X said, the white liberal is the black man's worst enemy. That's what Malcolm X, his famous saying, said. The white liberal. Well, today the white liberal wants you to be as poor as possible, and for all women to be barren and to become activists making $15 an hour, either renting in a shack or renting with a bunch of other roomies, but as long as you're out there holding a sign on the street corner that says, no kings, Donald Trump is evil, you're fine. So the next Republican comes along, and the next Republican is coming in 3 years. We cannot afford to go back to the Obama years or the Biden years, especially the Biden years or the Carter years. We cannot have any correlation with that type of economy. Like I said, if you became wealthy or you build your net worth off of Joe Biden's economy, please share that with us. And bring the receipts. Bring the receipts that shows how many stocks you purchased and your capital gains taxes. Show your AGI on your tax form. Block out everything else. The Epstein files are blocked out. By the way, when are they going to release the Epstein files? Melania Trump made a speech because James Carville and other people, the Daily Beast, were attacking her, saying that she had an association with Epstein because of an email that she had replied to from Gene. So they had to make a formal apology, otherwise they were going to be sued for millions, if not billions of dollars. It's the first time they've attacked a FLOTUS. They glorified Michelle Obama, they glorified Barbara Bush, they glorified Carter. They demonized the most sophisticated, elegant, beautiful First Lady that's ever walked the White House, and that's Melania Trump. Love her or hate her, her focus is on children and foster children and poor children, trying to get them out of poverty. A lot of funding going in there, and Elon Musk has got an IPO coming out, and when he gets that money, he's going to be helping Republican candidates. A lot of money is going to come in. Hopefully John Cornyn is going to be defeated by Ken Paxton in the state of Texas, and then Paxton should walk all over Telluride. Now, if you're not familiar with all these types of politics and local and state laws and bylaws, or what's taking place in Africa with the Bellum package, or the Australian energy crunch that's taking place right now, and why they're building their first refinery in 50 years. Don't worry, I'll cover all those topics for you. If you want to learn about corn and soybean, and coffee and sugar, we cover that here in Greenback Talk. We also cover options trading and options strategies. Some are very simple, some are complex. And when people attack me on that, I just ask them to show me their option strategy, and I check it against the options market. Otherwise, they just do a Google search. Let me do a Google search to reply to your answer. Either you can think and debate without having any Google help, or any other type of search engine help, or you can't. Either you know or you don't. It's a test question, right? Eliminate two, best choice is the last two, or you have to take your best guess if you have absolutely no clue. Which one makes the most sense to you? So we're back to the potential GDP growth and the labor force growth and the break-even of unemployment. Okay, so like I said, it's been unprecedented now in the United States. And there's two significant implications of near zero labor force growth. I mentioned that earlier. They want to tell you that we need 125,000 jobs per month to keep the unemployment level of 4.3%, 5%. Pick a number. Pick a number. So we need 125,000 people employed in January and February and March and April all the way through December to keep that unemployment rate at 5%. Well, that's not true. We're finding that out now with the new data that's coming out. And it's really scaring them. It's got them so worried because they've been exposed for the manipulation of the numbers. And then numbers go into funding, numbers go into the congressional bills, spending bills, to bail out cities and states who are in debt, who have overspent, who don't have a balanced budget. It's very important. Secondly, it implies that any growth in potential GDP will need to come entirely from productivity growth. Well, we're a service country. We're not really producing much except on the agriculture side. Name me something the United States produces. Okay. Oil. Natural gas. Name something else that the average blue-collar worker can participate in, because when they say productivity growth, that either means at the consumer level or that means at the manufacturing level. And if you don't have either one, where's that growth coming from? Something to think about, right? We'll get to those answers in just a few seconds. So the labor force is a pool of people, age 16 to the undetermined number, a never-changing number of 54 years old. It's like when you put all your money into a 401k at 20 years old, that's the biggest mistake you ever make in your life, because you can't touch it to 59 and a half. You must pull it out at 72. If you try to take it out at 20, 22 years old, you haven't saved much money at 2 or 3% because your salary's not high. It's going to take you 20 to 25 years to accumulate $100,000 in there if you get 8% return on the stock market year over year. That's a pretty big ask. So as we continue on, we're also going to talk about demographic shifts in the article. And that's unrelated to the business cycle. So now they're going to talk us on the potential labor force. And then they're going to talk about the abstract of the cyclical factors. A cyclical stock. Something that changes with the economy. Something that changes. It's there for a short term. That's what traders do. They trade in and out of cyclicals all the time. It has served its purpose for that amount of time, and now it's changed. It's time to get out. We need to reduce position in position A and go into position B. Because the weather states that we need this stock here, and now the weather has changed. We need this stock here, similar to gasoline. We have the winter driving blend, and now we have the summer blend, which is more expensive. And yes, I'm very well aware that gas is higher, $4.12 a gallon on a national average. Now, when I say average, that's because California, the West Coast, and the East Coast are at $6 or $7 a gallon. But where I'm at about $3 a gallon. So maybe they should use a median and not the average. An average takes everything, all things together, and then divide by a number. That's how you get an average. Excuse me. Okay, so the labor force is expressed as a population times the potential labor force participation rate. And that's your potential LFPR, labor force participation rate. Now, as a result of that growth, it's determined by population growth and changes in the potential. The potential. Okay, so that's a variable. And that variable can be whatever you want, the potential. This goes back to 1960, where the potential labor force has grown about 1.4% per year on average. 1.4%. Okay? Now we talked about the numerator and denominator and the census and the different numbers that are going to plug into it. The census number has never changed, but net migration and illegal immigration coming out and going in change, but the census data never changes. So if the census data has never changed, how are we supposed to get an accurate number? When we have more people coming in and leaving, they don't even know what the number is anymore. They never knew what the number was to begin with. How could they? Not every door participates. Did you participate in the last census, and were you honest? Something to consider. So take care of that right there. That's a brief overview on what's taking place there. And we have consumer sentiment. Now, they're saying that consumer sentiment, the most recent data is saying it is plunging. Okay? But it's plunging with Democrats, slightly plunging with Republicans, but it's holding steady and growing with the independents who control the vote of this country. Isn't that amazing? Just because they're not looking at this as from a partisan issue. How can they? They're independent. They're going to look at what's working best for their families and for themselves. What do they care what James Carville has to say? He's a Republican strategist. He's an old man who looks like a bag of bones. He has nothing new to say except spewing hatred for Donald Trump. That is his main theme. He's admitted to that on CNN and MSNBC multiple times. So if you don't know how to play the markets with Donald Trump's in office, then how are you supposed to learn how to play the markets with Joe Biden's in office with his policies? And why is the stock market skyrocketing under Donald Trump and it's not skyrocketing under Joe Biden? What do you think that is? You think that might have to do with taxes, policies, restrictions on oil and gas, transportation? You think that might have something to do with it? A consumption on rents, driving rents through the roof? So if you do the average salary of $63,000 per annum per year, which not everybody makes, that's not a solid number. That's a fictitious number. Because Lowe's and Home Depot pay between $14 and $16 an hour, unless you live on the East or West Coast. They pay slightly higher. So how is that person supposed to afford $2,400 a month in rent at $14 to $16 an hour? Just use the median right there. The 40 times 15 is what? 60? quick math, right? We can do that, right? Of course we can do that. Add a 0. 40 times 15, 600. Times 4, 24. Times 12. Get the point? It's unfeasible. You won't do it. You need at least 1 or 2 roommates, or you have to move with mom and dad, grandma and grandpa. And that's getting old. You're never going to build a net worth doing that. So right here, so the index of consumer sentiment, it fell to 47.6 from 53.3, and that's the largest decline below the 50.0 mark set in June of 2022, COVID time. Joe Biden was the president in 2022. This survey ran from March 24th to April 7th. 90% of interviewers completed before the April 7th announcement of the temporary ceasefire. So the ceasefire did not even play into this. So again, these numbers here that I'm telling you aren't even reliable. But this is the latest data. And this is another thing they like to do. They like to produce data just before a big event or after an event so they can say, oh, it's not inclusive. It cannot be inclusive. Oh, we forgot that. It's like core numbers, core CPI. So let's don't count food and energy. That's going to be the consumer price index without counting food and energy. Does that make any sense to you? Well, it shouldn't make any sense to you because food and energy are the 2 biggest cost expenditures for a family to have. Don't you agree? The sharpest move came in the Republican assessment of current economic conditions, which fell nearly 10 points to 79.8. That's on the Republican side, and consumer sentiment fell 10 points. Do we think this is honest and true? I don't know. This is the data. This is one piece of data. Okay, so Republicans are down 10% on the sentiment. And that's the lowest since November of 2025. Democrat sentiment slid further to 31.8 from 36.4, so stay 5 points. That's extending a prolonged trough. Now, independents posted a modest overall decline. The independents, a modest overall decline. That's because they're not thinking like a partisan fool. They're not thinking like a hack. They're not thinking like I hate Trump or hate Biden. They're thinking, how is this working for me? How is the Iran war going to benefit me? What's going to benefit your family and your children? That's how it's going to benefit you without the threat of a nuclear war or embargoes or shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. By the way, the Democrats want to call that the gays of Hormuz. So just how out of touch they are. Another thing the Democrats will say is that everyone is out of touch except them. And then those talking memos go to all the newscasters and broadcasts on NBC, CBS, and ABC, which nobody watches. Have you looked at the polling? Very few people are watching even their television shows. They're not even renewing their shows. People are watching TLC and Hulu and Netflix, which is now charging $20 more a month, up to $26 a month. You can get cheaper packages that have commercials and have ads. You should know this, right? I hope you know this. If you don't know it, you do now. Double check my information if you want. Verify. Always verify. Things change too fast. What I'm telling you right now today may change. I can tell you one thing is that Viavi stock had a breakout just like I was trying to prepare people for. So we got to that about $9 and up to $43 a share. So that one come. That's all about 5G and other components with the military and the future. So it crossed that $38 mark, which was the breakout point that I was waiting for. It was hovering there with a lot of resistance around 37.80, 37.91. Then it crossed 30. It actually went to almost $40. I'm like, boom, there's the breakout. So now it's racing towards 50. There could be a pullback because some analysts are saying that the price run up now is too great for a stock. But there's no such thing as that. If the stock is producing and the earnings are good and the debt is low and the cash flow is high and the institutional buying is good, your 50 and 200-day moving averages are above the normal trend lines. I sure hope I'm not losing it. This is all basic information here. If I am, send me a text or give me a call. My number's everywhere, so is my text. Send me an email. I'd be more than happy to explain it to you because I need you to build a net worth living paycheck to paycheck. Stop listening to a bunch of fools who just want to take your money and take you for a ride, keep you in the poorhouse, keep you in paycheck poverty. I've been there, not there anymore, but I've been there and been poorer than you. I'm not there anymore. So the current economic conditions index dropped to a record low of 50.1 from 55.8 in March, while the index of consumer expectations fell to 46.1. This is all like an alpha and beta in the stock market. One is the trend line. Above and below one, you get different results. It's either pro or con. It says here that consumers are reportedly growing anxious over high prices. Were they growing anxious over high prices when it was 9 to 13% when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were in the White House? I remember quite a bit of anger when all the executive orders, CEOs, that wiped out all of Trump's policies, his fiscal policies, monetary policies, fiscal policies. The Fed jumps in, the White House tries to counter. Oh yeah, all those around. Remember those big old book up to here? Remember that? All gone. Inflation took off like a racehorse. Remember that? Remember cars going for $60,000, $70,000, $80,000? Remember baby food being not available? How about diapers were unavailable? Do you remember that? Of course that happened. Housing took off, rents skyrocketed, insurance took off, skyrocketed. Food just skyrocketed. People couldn't even afford to eat. Homeless took off. Everything took off under the Democrat-led Joe Biden presidency, which was not won by fair and square because that was a COVID-related election and there was too many mail-in ballots. And we're now finding out now that those ballots never should have counted. Too late now. This is why the SAVE Act is trying to come back in. So let's get back to here. High anxiety. Personal finances are declining about 11%. Now this 11% is probably this data is coming out here in the last 45 days, which is the start of the Iran war. So let me tell you, so if you've got a 10-gallon gas tank in your car and your gas goes up by 10 cents a gallon, is that really going to affect you? Let's just say it goes up $1 a gallon if you have a 10-gallon gas tank and you get 30 miles per gallon. So it goes from $3 to $4 a gallon. Is that really going to bankrupt you? That extra $10 is going to bankrupt you. Well, if that's the case, then we really need to relook at how you're using your discretionary and your disposable income. So we're going to get into that as well, because right now Americans have disposable income and quite a bit of it because online spending is going through the roof. Restaurants are full, but guess what? Guess what's collapsing? The checking and savings account balances of Americans. No one is saving any money, so no one's prepared to buy real estate except for the corporations and investors like myself. Just waiting and waiting for the opportunity, just waiting and waiting. Already pre-approved, just waiting for that contract. And also, if you're planning on doing this, I hope you have your own real estate license so you're not paying that 3%. That 3% should be going back into your pocket. Let's say it's 2%, because you have to negotiate. You can do that now. You can negotiate the commissions. Let's just see. Okay, so 2%. So let's say you buy a $500,000 home at 2%. How much money is going into your pocket? It's 5 times 2 minus taxes, minus the brokerage split. Don't forget about that. You got a brokerage split, then you got taxes. That's why 1099, the depreciation, is such a nightmare for a lot of people who have multiple businesses who are trying to depreciate items on their tax returns. And you're running into all sorts of trouble. So we've got that to think about as well. So we're down here by 11%. Buying conditions for durable goods and vehicles also went downhill. That's been going downhill for a long time. How many new license plates do you see? That's because interest rates are still too high and the cars are still too high, and people really don't want to have it, so they're buying used cars, but now they jacked up the price on used cars. So when you raise the price on used cars, it makes the new car more attractive, but that new car is for 5, 6, 7, 8 years of payments. Are you ready for 84 months of payments? And what's the interest rate on that? Because the longer that you spend making payments per month on 84 months and that interest rate doesn't change at 4 or 5%, how much money have you spent there on interest? It's like a 401k, it's just wasted money. Unless you have a good salary. here at a certain age to get that 8% annual return. Then you can drop that annual return down to 5 or 6%, which is much more doable for a 401k to achieve your $100,000 goal. Then you can't pull it out until you're 59.5, and you have to pull it out at 72. Also changes here, unfavorable economic changes, unfavorable economics. Well, you know, eggs where I'm at are $2, gas is $3. So they must be thinking about the West Coast and the East Coast participants complaining here, or about the blue cities, blue states having a tantrum. That's what they like to do, is have a tantrum. When they find one thing, oh, cotton went up, cotton sugar went up $1, oh, world's coming to an end, oh, it's Trump's fault, it's the Republicans' fault. It's not their fault, it's not their policy, it's not the way they spend money, it's not because they're giving out entitlements and having fraud like in Minnesota. So right here, the expectations are likely to recover once consumers gain confidence that supply disruptions from the conflict. Oh, there it is right there. There it is right there. Nobody's got done talking about this. This is all about the war and the Strait of Hormuz. For Democrats, it's the gaze of Hormuz. So whenever I talk about the Strait of Hormuz, that's for the Republicans and conservatives and independents. When I reference the gaze of Hormuz, that's for the Democrats, progressive liberals, Marxist, communist, socialists. And by the way, the Democrats are over there in Cuba trying to persuade them to keep communism and socialism. Those people want nothing to do with that, just like in Venezuela. What happened in Venezuela? Why are they so poor? They have all that oil. Why are they so poor? So separate data released on Friday underscored the price pressures weighing on households. The consumer price index rose 0.9% in March, the largest monthly increase since 2022, driven by a record surge in gasoline prices. Well, gasoline prices surged well beyond these numbers when Barack Obama and Joe Biden were in the White House. Don't you remember the gas shortages? If you're old enough, when Jimmy Carter was the president, you could only buy gas on certain days. It had to match your license plate or your driver's license number. Standing in line there for hours and hours on end because of the Iran hostage situation that went on for 474 days or 447 days, whatever it may be, the exact date. Ronald Reagan becomes president, boom, the hostages are released, and oh well, everything starts to go back down. Same things happen with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, except now we have this war that has to be won because Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And our future generations in this country need a mother and a father and a nuclear family that believes in Jesus Christ and the Bible and the Ten Commandments and some common sense, conservative principles. Learn how to save your money, learn how to invest the money, buy some real estate, some land, some commodities, have a stock portfolio, build a net worth living paycheck to paycheck, live the American dream, and you're happy, 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 possibly on a single income. So now you're a single income with kids. Wow, wouldn't that be great? Wife stays home, takes care of the kids. You go off to work. Oh, Democrats are going to say that's racist, misogynist, homophobic, Islamophobic, any type of phobic that you could possibly think of. That's what they're going to think. So you're trying to tell me that a mother shouldn't stay home and raise her children? Is that what you're trying to tell me, that we should hand our kids over to the state and to daycare where total strangers are taking care of our children? Is that what you believe? That's a flawed theory. That's a flawed way of thinking. That's communist. I hope you understand that. Man, Danny over there is free buses. What happened to the free buses? They're not happening. It's not happening, people. The free buses? Now he's got himself into a financial bubble because he has to balance the budget in New York and everyone's left with the taxpayer. All that big taxpayer money, all those corporations, 5,000 businesses left. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, man, Danny. No. And now he wants to do a racial equity card for everyone except Caucasians or white people. And Malcolm X is saying that the white liberal is the enemy of the black person. So those are the facts. Those are the data on that situation. So why don't we just jump over here now? Let's just jump in here now. So that's the U.S. consumer spending right there. Back to the labor force participation rate, we kind of covered that. We kept that for you real quickly, as the census numbers never changed, but the net immigration coming in and out of the country has changed. The number of people working under the table not accounted for, the illegal alien not accounted for in the census or in the monetary data logs, because if you're paid under the table, you're off the book. So how do we track those people? We don't. So any unemployment number that you're seeing is probably not accurate. It doesn't matter who's in office. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican, an Independent, a Green Party, or a Democrat. The census number has never changed for the calculations based on the numerator and the denominator of the people working versus the people who are not working, which is the labor force participation rate, based on ages 16 to 54. Because they assume that everyone in America retires at age 55. Yeah, you can't collect Social Security until you're 65 or 72. And most likely, Social Security is not going to be around for the younger generation. So if you're 25 or 35, 40 years old right now, I sure hope you're saving for something else, because Social Security is not going to be around. And even if it is, you need to have the cost of living and the COLA, the Consumer Price Index, which is tied into that, reflecting the amount of spending and the amount of debt and household income and expenditures that you have. Because if you're not balanced, you're upside down, you're in trouble, you've got credit card debt. You see the big circle of lunacy that's taking place in America, with people not able to build a net worth living paycheck to paycheck. Even if I had $10 million in the bank, I'm still living paycheck to paycheck, but I've made the right move to have money and equities and some assets to where I can still live paycheck to paycheck, but I know that I'm secure. So as I get older, I'm going to be able to sit back and have some reprieve, unless everything comes crashing down. They take away all your real estate, they take away your cars, communism comes in and sweeps the nation, the illegals are granted all the benefits in the world, entitlements, our debt goes $100 trillion, we don't have the dollar anymore, we don't have the reserve currency anymore, and now we're in a global fight with Russia and China and the BRICS nations, and all things go to shit. And everything's running on green energy, and no one's going anywhere because green energy can't propel your vehicle or an aircraft carrier or anything anywhere. There's not enough charging stations for all the people driving the electric cars, and they've got lines and lines and lines to wait to charge your car. Meanwhile, you can't, because you have to get to work, but you can't get to work because you can't charge your car. Do you see the big circle of lunacy that could possibly take place? But nobody wants to account for that. Your disposable spending should be going into your bank account. Where's it going? McDonald's? Well, if you're eating that much food at McDonald's, I hope you're buying the stock. And just do cost averaging. We want to talk about cost averaging. That's when you buy a stock frequently at specific times, the exact same amount. You buy 10 shares throughout the year, every month, whatever you want to do, every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, every month, 5 weeks. Pick a cycle of buying. That is your cost averaging. And on the whole, it should reduce your cost approach to purchasing that stock. So you should pay a lower price in the long run and generate more shares and have more of a net worth income on the stock holdings, at least on paper, because it's really of non-value until you sell it. You can buy it for $1. There's really no value to it until you sell it. So we talked about the trending lines, we talked about Viavi, we talked about Wall Street, we talked about commodities, we talked about a lot of things here today. Now I'm going to look up a couple things here. Let me see my notes. Let me check out my notes real fast here. See if we've missed anything. Let's see here. And we talked about Chelsea Handler. She's that big mouth leftist lunatic. She wants all the women to not have any children. She wants them to have abortions. She's a far left lunatic. She wants you guys all to be lonely and poor, while she sits and making $1 million a year, $2 million a year. And she's going to try to justify it by saying that she's had an abortion or two. Okay. She's interconnected. Remember we talked about the interconnected? Sure. If you're interconnected, then you might have some reprieve. You may not need to live your life by certain principles, but then you're not going to seek everlasting life in heaven. You have to have some self-preservation, some self-respect, some self-reliance, and a lot of respect for Jesus Christ. Otherwise, all this materialistic stuff, I'm pretty simple. If I won $1 billion in the lottery, I would give most of that money away. I would help a lot of people. The ones who actually would accept the help. I wouldn't just be giving it to a bunch of homeless people, because they would just either go funnel themselves into drugs or alcohol, or they would do bad things with that money. So I would find people who really were endearing, who wanted to help. You pull those people up. Give them a fighting chance. If they're sleeping in their car, they get an apartment. That way I'm not stuck with your property taxes and your insurance. Get you into an apartment, pay that apartment rent for 5 years. That way I know you're safe for 5 years. Do nice things like that. Broken down car, we'll go get you a little cheap car. Give you a gas card. Gas allowance. Help people in food they can't afford when they're walking up to a checkout in a Walmart or a Costco or a Sam's Club. Pick a number. That's how much money you're going to get for that grocery bill. Be generous, be nice, help people. But anyways, the Democrats just want all the money for you. They want to raise taxes. They want to impeach Trump. They have nothing else. That's one thing I always ask my Democrat, my leftist friends here. What's your position? State your position. They can't state a position because they don't have one. All they have is rhetoric and attack Trump, attack the conservative, attack the Christian, attack the Bible, support radical Islam, Sharia law, and move forward with genital mutilation, high taxes, abortion, open borders, ID cards, not for voting. Oh no, not for voting, just for getting in and across the borders. No, you can't have ID for voting. You have to have an ID to get on the plane. Then you know this. I'm not going to repeat that situation. We talked about Dems going to Cuba. We talked about the manufacturing numbers. Let's see if I can get some information on the manufacturing numbers real fast. I don't have that one pulled up. So basic right here, it's 52.7 in March of 2026. Expansion in the manufacturing sector. So under Donald Trump again, the manufacturing, the Institute for Supply Management, is rising. It means that the country is expanding. There's an expansion, not a contraction. Democrats want you to believe that we're headed towards this major recession. As we talked about the numbers, that's far from the truth. It's not going to happen right now. It's just not going to happen. So right here, so production is expanding. New orders are expanding. Prices are rising by almost 78%. The manufacturing PMI is almost 53%. That's indicating growth. So the ISM Manufacturing Index is a monthly survey of purchasing managers at manufacturing firms nationwide measuring economic activity. Why is that important? Because they are in charge of the data and the health of the economy and manufacturing. Even though that China has most of the manufacturing, we have some. I asked that question earlier. What do we manufacture here? On a large scale. We're a service nation. The index equally weighs 5 components. Can you name the 5 components of manufacturing? That's a big one. We're going to start covering this all the time here because there's too much rhetoric and too much nonsense out there. No one seems to have them or use the brain that God gave them. They just want to listen to the rhetoric. And I don't like Trump. Well, you better like Trump for 3 more years because you have a chance to make a lot of money under Donald Trump. And if you can't see that, well, then I'll wait for you to make another mistake and I'm going to buy that next piece of property and you're going to become the renter in my house. Which is fine with me. You need a large security deposit. You need a great credit score, first class in security. It's a lease for 1 year. And if things don't go well, depending on what states, you get part of your money back. If you damage these, you have to pay for them. So here's the 5 things. There's new orders, production, employment, supplier deliveries, and inventories. So how many new orders are being placed by companies that need that manufacture? How many new orders, how many new customers are taking place? And then that ties into production because if you have new orders, production ramps up. you have new orders and production's ramping up, that means you're going to need more employees. So now you have a hiring cycle. This is what we're seeing taking place now. This is why the jobs numbers are breaking records. In March it was 178,000, forecasted was 60,000. Okay? So it's one of the earliest monthly economic indicators heavily influencing investor sentiment and providing insights into GDP trends. Then we go back to GDP and productivity, and that's going to be a heavy outlier right now. Looking into the future, how is that going to work? And then we have to look again at the census data. We have to look at the numerator and denominator, net migration, negative migration. And we also have to take into account the transportation of people leaving different states, moving into other states with different tax brackets. So now you're going to have different states being financially liable for their own behavior of illegitimate spending and trying to claim that they have a balanced budget when they're completely broke. And this is what they're trying to stick into the bills that the taxpayer is going to foot. Right now, the people do not want to help support California, which is bankrupt. They are bankrupt. They are beyond bankrupt. And yet they're claiming, the Democrats are claiming that Governor Newsom is a genius economically and financially, and that state is humming and running on all 8 cylinders. And they have the highest unemployment rate, the highest gasoline taxes, the highest taxes, the highest homeless problem. So they can't rebuild from the fires, they can't rebuild from the floods, they have a water issue there. All their water problems are just, it's a disaster. The high-speed train rail, it hasn't even started. It's sitting there, $10 billion, $11 billion. Has some interest on that. I'm sure it's even higher than that. Just the number they're just protruding onto everybody else. So that's just about it right here. Have a quick look again. And I think that's about it. Quick look here. One thing that they are talking about right now. Remember that Cuba, those Florida speedboat that was attacked? Yeah, the FBI is going to investigate that. How do you feel about Bam Bongino and Cash Patel? How about Pam Bondi? You think Pam Bondi was doing a good job? No, I don't think Pam Bondi deserved that job at all. Ron DeSantis should be in that role. They're saying Jeannie Pirro out of Fox News, she may get that job. Whoever gets that job needs to do the job properly. But Pam Bondi was an absolute disaster. And that will say us one more time, for the 10th time, that all Epstein files need to be released, unredacted, and released to where the public has access to them. And if there was a crime committed, those people need to be arrested, tried, and if they're convicted, go to prison. It's pretty simple. Just because I talk a lot about the pro-Trump agenda is because there's something of pro to talk about. If there was a con, that's what I would be talking about here. If there was a recession, I'd be talking about the recession. If they were doing a new census every year, we'd be talking about the new census numbers and getting an accurate unemployment number and an accurate labor participation force rate. And then we'd talk about a new GDP number and new unemployment numbers. We'll have to see how this all shakes out here. So the FBI is checking into that. I did talk about the Bellum package over there. And things, Africa is poised to see a lot of growth. That's what their new Bellum package is about. It's about the G7 and the climate change. And they feel they have a little bit of power because they have something to sell to the world now. They're not going to be manipulated. Remember how the Clintons went over there to Africa and they just caused complete disaster and bankrupt that country? They were there to help them with $150 million. It turned out to be a complete nightmare. Where'd that money go? When the Clintons left the White House, they left the White House poor, with all the furniture in China was missing. When Barack Obama left the White House, he left the White House pretty much penniless as well. But Democrat donors came to the rescue to the fictitious book deal and gave him $10 million. Now Donald Trump's made almost $2 billion. That's because he's a marketing genius. If you can't see that, so he has a legacy. It's one thing Trump has. You see Trump name everywhere. Golf courses, hotels, casinos, roads, bridges, highways, schools. And it's going to expand now into television, into Hollywood. social media platforms. So he's worth almost $7 billion now. He's probably going to end up with about $100 billion in net worth. Whether or not he survives to see that, I'm not sure, but his children will definitely see that, and their grandchildren will see that. But everyone wants to attack the Trump kids who have never been arrested, do not drink or do drugs. They may have had some divorces or personal problems like we all do. But really, you can't really exploit that. You can't find any crimes against them. They've been before the House subcommittee now for how many times? How many times has Eric Trump testified? Too many times. So as we go through some of the liberal broadcasts, the Iran war has ripple effects for crisis in African nations. Then goat found here, Iran war will increase hardship in Africa. Now it's all about Africa and the Strait of Hormuz. For the Democrats, the gays of Hormuz. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you there. So the gays of Hormuz, for my Republican and conservative independent friends, this is the Strait of Hormuz. So now Africa's making a big news. We talked about the Bellin package and the climate change, and they want money for this, and they're trying to build a net worth over there. Even Trump has said there's going to be a lot of money coming into Africa. There's a lot of bad politics going on in Africa. It's a rough and tough nation. That needs a little bit of regulation and some help there. I don't know how much the taxpayer here in America is going to foot that bill for him. War crimes coming on here for Australia. Not only does Australia have a war crimes problem with some of their military members, they've got an energy problem there, and that's why they're building that first refinery in 50 years. Because they're starting to see, now the world is starting to see that we cannot rely on the Strait of Hormuz. As a matter of fact, the U.S. does not rely on the Strait of Hormuz. But the rest of the world does, especially China, Cuba, Iran. Did. So if you look at this from a political strategic point of view, Trump has kind of isolated China, some of the BRICS nations, which is actually genius because they're trying to destroy the reserve currency of Greenback. So we can actually put a lot of pressure on China. China is trying to give intelligence and weapons to Iran, but once this whole peace deal settles down, they're not allowed to have any shipments of weaponry or to build a nuclear weapon. And when the Strait of Hormuz, I'm sorry, the gays of Hormuz for all my Democrat listeners, when the Strait of Hormuz is reopened, Trump's going to probably issue a proclamation to where the tolls are going to go to the United States of America, not to Iran. And that's how it should be. If we're going to patrol and secure NATO, then NATO either puts up or shuts up, or we remove ourselves from NATO. And if the UN is going to consistently attack the United States, I think it's time that we shut down the United Nations building in New York City, and I think we should expel all the diplomats and take away the political immunity that they have. They can commit a crime in our country, and they still cannot be charged for that. And I believe that extends to their family and close linkage, the familial linkage. So keep all these things in mind. We've covered quite a bit here. If you have any questions, you can always hit me up on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. It doesn't matter. I'm there. We have here's something interesting. Mel Schilling, married at first sight star. She dies at age 54. Oh, that is just a shame. The relationship coach. Oh, she was on the Australian and British channels. You see that over there? That kind of gets a little wacky too. But anyways, that's about it here for some of the financial numbers that we've got. We've covered quite a bit. We're going to get into the Fed. We'll get into some options. We'll get into some commodities. We'll get into some equities, which we did a little bit here. Check out the equities. Check it out. See how it's going to help you. Remember, if you don't own real estate, you're going to be left behind. And if a Democrat comes into the office and opens up those borders again, it's you who are going to be decimated financially because the consumption tax is going to kick in. Inflation is going to be here. They're going to come in. They're going to put in low-income housing near you. Higher rents. They're going to lower your working wage. And they're not going to care. So just remember that. It's been a great conversation. I hope you got a lot out of this. I'm Rich Delivers. This has been a special report from Greenback Talk.